We're officially ready to rock and roll. Probate. So we're talking about probate today, and just a little bit why we're even talking about probate. Got a call from an attorney friend that said got a client who needs to list their home and it's a probate. Now I can take it over. So of course, how much experience did I have in probate at that time? Zero, right? But like all of us agents, right? When someone asks us when we take a listing, what's our answer to the question? Absolutely, it matter what it is, the probate, short sale, trust, foreclosure, anything but a standard listing, and we're ready to rock and roll. Yes, we're going to say we can take it. However, it's important for us to understand this process. And after taking the class, and let me just preface this training today, that this is not a class that is designed to make you a probate specialist. I would encourage you, it's $118 to go onto the CAR website and you can get designated. I literally got designated on Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, I finished this all up. So it's not terribly long to be over the weekend and Monday to get it finished, but you can get it done. It's got a great binder, all the information that's there. Attorney that teaches is Paul Horn, does an outstanding job. All right, so I would encourage you, if you want more information, that's going to be your resource to go to. For those that are here in the class today, I'll email this to those who are watching online, but we have what's called the probate process. So it looks like this right here. And I'm going to have to, no, I don't have a copy on my computer at this time, so I can't share the screen with you on that one. I probably should.
You want me to email it out to everybody?
You can. Yeah, Felipe's going to email it out to you guys real quick so you have a copy of it. But it's the probate process, basically from start to finish. And let me ask you this question as we get started. What is the purpose of probate? Anyone can talk to me? I'm not able to look at this chat, so I need you to speak directly into your microphones. All right, I've got my volume up. So speak into your microphone if you're watching on Zoom. What is the purpose of probate? Why do we have probate?
To allow the estate to transfer to the heirs so it doesn't remain in state ownership.
It allows the state to, again, thank you so much for that, Kelly, to be turned over to the heirs. And the word probate is actually Latin, which means to prove the will. Because we have probate because someone passed away without necessary instructions, we'll call them, for their heirs. All right? But there is a will, right? So there are 9 exceptions to getting around probate. 9 exceptions to getting around probate. Most people think, I have a will, so because I have a will, we're not going to probate. Again, understand that probate means to prove the will. So in short, if you have a will, you still go to probate. All right? Let's talk about the 9 ways to avoid probate. Does anyone know? Can someone give me just the number one? There may be one answer we can get out there of one way to avoid probate.
A trust.
There it is. A trust. Thank you, Jennifer. Number one way to avoid probate is to have a trust in place. All right? Any other ways you can avoid probate? Say, for instance, we have a husband and a wife who have passed, husband and a wife, husband passed away, wife is remaining, holding in a certain way would avoid probate once that husband passes away and it turns over to the spouse. What would be that way of holding title?
Right of survivorship if it's a 50% ownership.
Right, survivorship, that's on community property, so very good there. So community property with right of survivorship, the title and property passes directly to the remaining spouse. All right? Another way, any other way of holding title where we could avoid probate? Anyone know? Another way to hold title that you can avoid probate. I know you guys know this.
Joint tenancy.
Joint tenancy, because joint tenancy in itself has right of survivorship built right into it. All right, so we've got living trust, joint tenancy, community property with right of survivorship. We can also hold title as community property here in California and get around some probate as well. Another way is going to be a spousal petition. That's for community property, or if there is a will And then, of course, a Hexstead petition. We'll talk a little bit about that one as well. And then last but not least, and I'm not even sure if these are actually happening anymore because the last date for this was January 1st of 2022. I'm not sure if it was renewed or not. Was a revocable transfer deed on death. That is another way that you can avoid probate. That's actually a way of, if you can't afford, it's really put in place for those who could not afford a trust. Trust may cost you 3-5 grand, somewhere in between that number right there. And so for those who may be low income and they couldn't afford to put together a trust, they put, I think it was 2016 when it came out. Let me see real quick my notes. 2015, September 21st, 2015 was when the revocable transfer on death deeds was brought about, but it actually expired January 1st, 2021. I don't know if that one was actually renewed or not. It didn't mention it in our class. So that's something that you might want to check on. But those are the 9 exceptions to avoiding probate. Can anyone tell me what does it cost out of pocket for the heirs for the probate process on average? Do you have any idea what it might cost? Out of pocket, before you pay your attorneys, just because we'll talk about that as we move forward, but out of pocket, what might it cost an heir to a property for a probate?
15,000.
15,000. High number, high number. A little bit lower, quite a bit lower.
Court filing
fee. So there's a couple of those, right?
9,000.
9,000, still too high. It's only about $2,500. $2,500 is about what it costs out of pocket. The really cool thing about it is, in a probate, the personal representative who actually pays that is actually reimbursed that money at the close. All right? So whatever they're taking out of pocket, they can know, all right, maybe we don't have any money right now, but we will be reimbursed at that thing. That's the personal representative, the person who's going through this process to the probate for the heirs, all right? Because there may be son, daughter, 3 or 4, whatever it is. There's only one person who's representative who's going to actually handle this process. All right? Everybody follow there? So we know what probate is. We see the 9 exceptions to probate. If you have clients, especially if they're getting older and they don't have a trust and they tell you that they have a will and everything is in place, I would tell you that this is a great place for you to now step in as a real estate consultant and give them some guidance as to going ahead and really getting a trust put in place. Because a probate takes about how long? You have an idea of the average time frame for a probate? About a year. The average time frame for a probate is about a year. And if we look at this little timesheet that was emailed out to you, so Cleveland did a great job emailing that out to you, from start to finish, about 12 months to your first hearing is actually about 5 to 6 weeks is the long span on that one there. That's when you're first getting in front of the judge. All right? Now, we as real estate professionals, there are some things that we need to know and understand in this probate so that we can properly communicate with the heirs as well as with the attorneys. All right? So the first thing here that I want to go over with you is this petition. So what happens is when someone passes away, the heirs would go to the attorney and say, listen, you know, mom, dad passed away. They left the estate intestate, meaning they don't have a will, all right? And we need to sell this property. The attorney at that point is going to do some investigating. We're looking at the value of the estate because some of the probate is also determined on the value of the estate. Under a certain threshold, you actually can avoid probate as well. So we're looking at small estates. So the first is for raw land. If it is raw land and it is under 55,425, you would actually be able to avoid probate there. And you would simply file an affidavit of real property. You'd have a probate referee go out and he would assess the value of that property. They do what's called an inventory and appraisal form, putting out the value of that to return it to the court. They can't owe anything on the property, so no funeral. They can't have any debts, so the funeral fees have to all be paid and so forth. And then they simply have all the heirs sign. There's no court, and it's done in about 2 months. 55,425 under that threshold, raw land. If it is between the threshold of 55,425 and 166,250, then at that point it's a very similar process. However, it takes just a little bit longer. Again, you're avoiding the whole probate process. Well, you're not avoiding the entire process, but it's quite a bit shorter. This is going to be between 2 to 4 months for this process right here. They're going to simply do another petition to determine successor of real property. Attorney can help them with that, or they can get even a typically you don't even need an attorney. You can get a paralegal who can help you with that. Much cheaper. You have to wait till 40 days after death. The probate referee would go out much the same as he did in the other. He's going to value that property, fill out the appropriate form, the appraisal and inventory form. You will have to go to court for a hearing. Judge is going to sign off on everything, and you move on. You're done. Again, about a 2 to a 4 month period of time for anything under the value or between the value of $55,425 and $166,250. How many properties in the state of California are valued at about $166,250 or under? We don't really have much there, right? So for us here in California as real estate professionals, we are most likely going to have to go through this probate process, right? And we want to understand this process. The attorney starts out with this petition. It's done online. They'll go in and say, we have, this is the estate right here, these heirs, we want a date. And immediately the same day, they'll get a date. So if they petitioned it today and it's July 1st, it may come back like sometime in the beginning of August is when it's going to set their initial date. All right? What you want to do as a real estate professional, as soon as you hear that it is a possible, or there's a death, you want to get a copy of the grant deed. The grant deed is going to tell you how it's vested and who's on title. We need to know that, so we know how to, again, because maybe for instance, our clients came to us first and they didn't go to the attorney, right? I don't know what to do. Mom and dad died, didn't go to the attorney. What do I do? Pulling that grant deed shows us again how it was vested and who's on title. Is there an option that they don't remember how they took title and that we can avoid probate if it was a community property with right of survivorship, right? If it was a joint tenancy, whatever the case may be, by looking at that, now we know. So you want to start first with your grant deed. The petition is filed. The petition doesn't cost you like $465. That's what's going to come out of pocket from the personal representative to start that process moving forward.
So not the agent, just so we're clear, is this, we're not talking about the agent, correct?
The agent.
Just so
Exactly.
they know.
The agent, you're not gonna pay
We're not
anything.
doing this, we're just
Okay?
giving them the time.
But this is the information for you to know and understand, because when someone calls and starts having this conversation with us, and I've never done a probate before, in my experience, I just was like, so what questions do I ask? I didn't know anything at all. Where do we start? And so this is gonna help you to know at least where to start in this process. So that way your clients aren't, you and your clients aren't lost together,
Right.
all right? Because they're already lost, right? So they're coming to you for guidance, right? So what has to happen with the probate is when that petition is filed, at that point, they also have to notify, as you see our step number 2 here, a notice of the court hearing must be published in the newspaper. For any and all probates, whatever that local newspaper entity is, the attorney's gonna take care of that. And they're gonna publish it in a local newspaper when that hearing date is gonna take place. So therefore, if there is, for instance, unfortunately, when people pass away, we thought mom was leaving everything to the daughter or the son, and we got the black sheep of the family and no one talks to, and he thinks he's entitled to something. And so they have to have an opportunity to know that this is taking place, and they can show up at that hearing and object should they choose to. Because at that hearing, we're gonna be given some instructions of how this estate is going to be taken care of moving forward. All right, so that's first petition, then they file a notice in the newspaper, and then we simply wait for our hearing date. The hearing date, which is typically about 30 days, 45 days out from when we initially we can move forward. Here's where we're going to get some instructions. Now, typically, before the hearing, the attorney might get a notice from the court saying, we're pretty much approved, we're just going to go through the formalities. Or they're going to say there's some deficiencies and we're going to need to get those cleared up. So coming into this hearing, the attorney should know if there's something outstanding that they need to do so they can be prepared. But typically, if everything's going to look like it's going to be rock and roll, no issues there, you're going to move right on in. All right? In this hearing, we've got a couple of things that we need to do. First and foremost, as you'll see at the bottom of this document, it's called full authority versus limited authority. This is a critical piece, a very critical piece in the probate process. Full authority is as if I can stand in and make all the decisions. I have that personal representative. Limited authority says that we've got to get court approval. You want, if at all possible, to be able to get full authority for your personal representative, so you don't have to keep going back and forth to court, setting up hearing dates. Make sense? Full authority is what you want.
Again, not the agent. We're talking about the
This is
representative.
all representative. I want to show you what that looks like. Those who are here in the room, that's the cool part, when you come in person, you get like.
Yeah, no.
I want to show you.
He's just telling us it's not on here, but during the hearing, I mean, they're gonna figure out if the person's gonna have full authority or not. And if it's limited, then they have to get court approval for every step of the process. But if they got full authority, then you're gonna represent them and sell the house.
Yep, and that's what you want. But we have this statute. Appraisal.
It's also on the listing contract. It's gonna talk, when you do a probate listing, it's gonna talk about if you have court approval.
Yep. I'm not seeing it as too many exhibit A, B, C, and D. That's what it is. Oh.
So full authority and limited.
Well, there's a box that's checked on this document that shows you, whether or not they have full or limited authority, and that's the box that you're hoping to have signed. So we as agents, a couple of things that we need to move forward. So we've got this ball rolling, we have the initial petition, it's been published in the newspaper, the attorney's working on their part of it, we're waiting for this hearing. At this hearing date, the judge is going to issue what is called the order and letters. The order states who is the personal representative, whether or not they have full or limited authority, whether or not a bond is needed or not needed for this property as well. Why would you need a bond on a probate? You would maybe have an idea. Why we might need to bond this property, these assets?
If the debts supersede or are more than the profit of the sale.
Great response. What they're looking for actually is, say for instance, I name Maria as the personal representative, right? So Maria's gonna go to the bank, she's gonna open a trust account, so that when we sell this property, all of those proceeds are gonna be put into that trust account. If mom had any other assets, everything's gonna go into that trust account, all right? Well, let's say that Maria has a gambling problem, right? And so she goes to Vegas and spends all that money and loses. Now the remaining heirs have nothing. The bond is to protect the remaining heirs, to should the personal representative go off and spend that money, they can still get paid. The bond is just simply an insurance policy. All right. So that is the purpose of the bond. And if you come into a case where we're working on right now, where the personal representative does not qualify for a bond, very rare space one may not qualify for a bond, they will put that money in a blocked account. That's also on that first documentation for the orders as well. The blocked account cannot have anything, nothing can come in and out of that without court approval first. All right? So if the court doesn't feel that they can trust one of the heirs with the proceeds and everything that comes with it, they put it in a blocked account and then they move forward as court authorizes to do that. Because what we represent in the probate is really just the first third of that process, the sale of the home. Make sense?
So they don't always have to have a bond, or they won't.
No. There it is. It's I was just going to show that to those who are here in the room.
So they won't always, be, okay. Is there a cost to have that?
Good question.
Great question. There is a cost to the bond, and that all perhaps is about that $2,500. I think it's I want to say it was about $500 or something like that for like a $20,000
Depends on
bond.
the amount, yeah, it just depends on
So
the
it's a
amount.
financial insurance of.
It's an insurance
bond,
policy,
yeah.
yeah, it's a security bond.
Mhm. Exactly. So great question there. And of course, all of that is paid out from the personal representative.
Mhm.
All right? So they of course qualify
Upfront.
upfront. Well, that's paid upfront. All right? For us, in the real estate side of this transaction, we're focusing on what you see in front of you is really the first 3 months. You should be able to, from that initial petition to closing escrow, be done in about 3 months. for probate. Now, the whole process, of course, takes about a year, but you should be able to be done. If you got a competent attorney that's working there and the personal representative doing everything that's supposed to be, this does not have to be a year-long process for you as an agent. And the really cool thing about it is that when the home sells, well, let me ask this question. Do you get paid when the home sells? When the home sells, closing the property.
Close it up,
When the home sells, closing escrow. So you don't have to wait this entire year period to get paid for the work that you've done. All right?
If we get our job, we get paid to complete their.
Correct.
Exactly. So great piece right there for us to know. Then just, you can move on to the next one. All right? So critical thing right there. What you need is, what we looked at here is first going to be the orders and then the letters. The letter just states again, who has the authority to do what? There can be different types of letters, whether there's a will, whether there is not a will, whether that a home is in foreclosure, potential foreclosure, and then they can have special letters that says we have to speed up this process. But those two items right there is what you need to take the listing and sign the purchase agreement. All right? Those two items is what you need. So if you're writing anything down, the two items that you need as an agent to be able to have your client sign the listing agreement and the purchase agreement is going to be orders and letters. All right? Orders and letters. You get all of that, if everything's in place, about 2 weeks after that first hearing. They'll go in, judge is going to sign off everything, clerk of the court is going to go ahead and finalize everything. In about 2 weeks, attorney will get everything. They'll send you copies. You can open escrow. Follow me? The next process that takes place on this right here is once the orders and letters are received, and this is where the process can get stretched out on a probate, is there are letters that are sent over to creditors. So there, most likely, there could be potentially a mortgage on this home. There could be outstanding credit card bills that are not paid. So they have to send letters out to all creditors notifying them of this probate. And they have 4 months to respond so that they can see about getting paid. Most attorneys that I hear was in the class we were taking said if it's an unsecured debt, they really try to get those written off. And most of the time, they can get those written off. So maybe that's something that you want to know as well when you're talking to your client. Oh, mom and dad has all these other like credit card bills and this bill and that bill. Unsecured debts, or unsecured debts, those a lot of times if a good attorney can get those written off. And really the only thing they're worried about paying off is that mortgage.
So as a listing agent, if somebody comes to me with orders and letters, can I list the home, and is that debt process part of the listing, or do I have to wait for that, or is that happening behind the scenes?
That's happening behind the scenes. All right, great question there. Very good. Orders and letters, you're ready to rock and roll. You're opening escrow. Off we go. So during this process, we have to value this property. How much is it worth? Who's to determine that? Well, the state is going to, or the court's going to send out what's called a probate referee. So when you hear the term probate referee, you know, basically that's an appraiser. And that appraiser is going to go out to the property and he's going to do what appraisers were doing during COVID. What were they doing during COVID? Were they going inside?
Nope.
They were driving right by the house. So let's say, for instance, that homes in that community are selling for $500,000, right? Appraiser or referee, rather, he drives by the home, takes a snapshot, on his way, goes back to his computer, pulls the comps, right? The home is worth $500,000. You have personally been inside of the home. It is in need of, it is in disrepair, deferred maintenance throughout. I don't know, plumbing leak, whatever the case may be. Because he does not go inside, you could have a problem should you, as a listing agent, sell that property for $350,000. Because the judge is going to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? So the responsibility would fall on you as the agent to make sure that you took pictures and you shared all of that with the attorney who would make sure that it was communicated to the referee. Make sense? You want to make sure you do that on the listing because if the house is immaculate, that's fine. But again, it helps them to value that property because the judge can pause everything and say, wait a minute, your selling is probably way further value than it is, and we're not going to allow that. So then you have to start that process all over again, and you don't want to have to do that. Does that make sense? So make sure when you take the listing, like you do with any listing that you take, you go in, you take pictures, you see, okay, this is what we're looking at right here. Because typically a lot of times probates tend to be in disrepair. There tend to be some problems with the property. Mom and dad were old, they weren't taking care of it anymore. You know, they died in the house. All kinds of unfortunately terrible things happen that cause us homes to go into probate sales. All right. We have one right now. It's all boarded up. We're just trying to protect it to get it to close. Actually, there's two that are boarded up now. Just trying to get those suckers into escrow and on their way. And the probate referee just drove by. So we had to make sure we took pictures of the interior so we could share that with him so we could properly value that property. Because the last thing we want to do is be able to say, no, sorry, start all over again. Right? The families are already going through a very tough time. We want to make this as seamless for them as possible. Make sense? So make sure that you're taking pictures of the property for the probate referee. Typically, he has 60 days from when he gets his order to complete that appraisal. All right, 60 days before the referee has from when he gets the order to go out to complete that process. Again, knowing these time frames helps you to be able to guide your client to say, we won't be here for a year. Don't worry, everyone has time frames they have to fit within. So if I think about this right here, you can see how this could work, how the longest it could possibly be. If I got a petition and we went to our initial hearing, 30 days, it's it. From that point forward, the referee took his sweet time getting out there. Maybe he was really busy. Another 60 days. Now we're 3 months out, right? But at that point, you could list the home, you do a good job, get it sold in the next 30 days. So maybe you're at about 4 or 5 months getting it all closed up. So maybe worst case scenario, 6 months. Worst case scenario, we can get this done for you guys. If in a perfect world, maybe we can get it done for you in 3. That's the expectation for your clients. Make sense? Very good. Once you have all of that done, one process, I almost forgot. The petitions and letters, under the orders and letters, you accepted an offer. When you accept an offer, the attorney is going to send out what is called the proposed, don't forget it. Yeah, notice of proposed action. The notice of proposed action notifies all the heirs. We are accepting this offer. You have 15 days to object. If they do not, you can move forward. All right? So the notice of proposed action is sent out to all the heirs once you have an accepted offer. You're going to send them the offer and everything. Here's what we got. Is everybody okay with us selling mom and dad's estate this way? Nobody says anything, off you go. All right, in a perfect world, you get no objections. All right, are you following there? Yep. Very good. I want to talk to you a little bit about, let's do the final petition first, then we'll go into other things. This is on a full authority. This is like the simplest, easiest, this is the way that you want it to be every single time. Hopefully, that probably won't happen, but you'll know we'll get you trained upon the rest as well. The final petition takes place once the attorney puts together a summary of everything, and then they send that over to the court and they close that up. We have nothing to do with that. We're outside of it. We're already gone. We're on to the next sale, hopefully, at this point. But then there are also final petitions, another $465. That's going to be out-of-pocket expense for the personal representatives. Just so you have an idea of what this costs. Because we said that it was about $2,500 for a probate, right? Out of pocket. But you have to pay the attorney, right? How does an attorney get paid on a probate? You can explain this to your clients. They get 4%, and this is across the board, so it doesn't matter what the estate is. This is the way that they've drawn it up. It's 4% of the first $100,000. So I have a home that's worth, we're going to call it $1 million. We guys are going to do some math here. I have a home that is worth $1 million. I'm going to sell it for $1 million. The first fee for the attorney is 4% of the first $100,000. 3% of the next 100,000, and 2% of the next 800,000. How much are we going to end up paying in attorney fees for this estate? 4% of the first 100,000, 3% of the next 100,000, 2% of the next 800,000. What's the total?
23K.
It's $23,000. That's what it's going to cost in attorney fees for the sale of that estate. Also, the personal representative gets the same, what's the word I want to call it? And I don't know if this payment is the right word, but they get paid the same as the attorney.
Oh, the same proceeds or same payout.
So what the way that it works is, say for instance, it's $100,000, right? The attorney's $23,000. Now I have to pay the personal representative his $23,000. Yes, representative get paid too. And they get reimbursed for anything that they paid out of pocket.
So the representative is not necessarily a family member.
Representative, but it might not be a family member, but typically is an heir.
Typically is, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
One can be assigned.
Mhm. You can will to whoever you want. And you can really say, I want, Felipe to be my personal representative. Okay?
Same as the executor though, or is
It is.
okay.
So, and with the great question there, so an executor, just so we have our verbiage correct, or our terms right, an executor is the name of the individual if we have a will.
No.
If we got intestate, we have who's called an administrator. So when we start with talking, having these conversations with the attorneys back, they'll know, we're talking about, do we have a will? Okay, because they have a will, we have an executor. We don't have a will, okay, who's gonna be the administrator of this estate? Make sense?
Yeah.
And that person is going to be the personal representative, most likely. And then they are going to get paid as the attorney gets paid, because they're doing all this work to get this done. Whatever proceeds remain is then divvied out between the heirs. That personal representative quite possibly could be one of those heirs. Okay? So I didn't even know that was something very new to me, and so I was like, wow, that's crazy.
You know what? If the executive is female, what do we call them?
Executrix.
Executrix. There's an actual name.
Yes. And administrator
Administrator and something else.
administratrix.
That one has-
As well. But yeah, they do have differentiate between male and female. All right. So we've talked about full authority. That's the easy probate. There is also what is called limited authority, and we'll just jump right into limited authority. Limited authority, we have to have court approval. All right. And if you look at this little diagram we have for you right here, the selling price must be within 90% of the probate referee's appraised value. Doesn't necessarily have to be that way under full authority. The court judge is going to be looking for it to be close to that, but under limited authority, it must be a minimum of 90% of the probate referee's appraised value. Second piece that we must remember on limited authority is 10% is the court's deposit. So like someone comes in and they want to put down $100 into their EMD, not going to happen. Limited authority, it's 10% of whatever that purchase price is. Court mandates that, no way around it. All right? But follow me there. Good. To accept an offer, we have to take it to the judge. There is no, I like it, just sign, ready to rock and roll. You can sign, yes, because you have limited authority, but then we have to send it before the judge, and then the judge approves it. Okay? So that's why this can drag the process out, because I could sign today. As the administrator right there, we're accepting an offer, ready to rock and roll, right? Send out the letters of proposed action, letters of, well, write it down. I'm not all more just here, but yeah, so that is a notice of proposed action. Send those out with rock and roll. When it's limited authority, now I'm waiting for another court date.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Do we have to go to court before the executor or administrator signs the agreement? Or does the signature come first and then it gets sent to court? or is it vice versa?
I don't understand your question, sorry.
Okay, so if there's an offer, it's accepted, does the administrator or executive sign first before going to court? Or does it have to go to court first before it gets signed?
Great question. So if in full authority, they're gonna sign, you don't have to go to court. With limited authority, you would sign, but then it has to be approved by the court.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Executor would sign, just,
Yes.
you know, and then they would submit it to the court.
Then it's submitted to the court, right? Exactly. Great question. All right. That's really the big difference between limited and full authority is the steps that all take place throughout going back to court for those hearings and the judge to sign off on anything that's taking place. All right, that's going to be your biggest difference there. We really slow down your whole process there. All right. Any questions so far on anything that we've covered? All right. We're not focused professionals as of this class just yet, but again, we're getting an idea of what takes place. All right. What I do want to talk to you a little bit about is taxes. So it is mentioned on here on taxes. So this is, first and foremost, do we give any tax or legal advice as agents?
No,
Never give any tax or legal advice. However, it is important for you to be aware of just some taxes that are associated with estates. So if someone is selling an estate, the estate tax, and there's 3 different taxes that are associated with selling a property. When it goes to probate, first is the estate tax. In California, the estate tax cap, where you actually don't pay any tax, is 11.7 million. So if your client is concerned that they might have to pay an estate tax, unless they're very rich, they're not going to have to pay any estate tax. It's 11.7 million. And if it's a spouse, they can put that together, and it ends up being 23.4 or whatever it is that they're free from estate tax. Okay, so most likely, most people avoid estate tax. All right. Capital gains, step up clause with capital gains. So that's the, well, mom bought the home for $300,000 in 1970, and now it's worth $1 million. Are we going to have to pay capital gains on that? No, because when it passes from mom to the heirs, you get what's called a step up to what its current assessed value or market value is. And if you sell at that price, then you don't pay any capital gains. That's relieving for the family as well, because 35%, which can be capital gains, is a large chunk of whatever that estate was. All right, so keep that in mind. And then the other one that I want to bring to your attention to, as far as taxes is concerned, is Proposition 58 and 193. Proposition 58 said that I could leave my property to my son or daughter, or whatever, a parent to a child, right? And I would avoid any taxes there. All right. Proposition 193 said I could leave it to my grandson or granddaughter and I could avoid taxation. Thank goodness for Proposition 19. It erased all of that. It's gone. The only way that you can avoid that tax for the home being reassessed, because what it is the home being reassessed. That's what you're avoiding. What Proposition 58 and 193 did is they said you get the property now, it's not going to be reassessed. You're paying taxes as if you always owned it. Now it's going to be reassessed. So mom was paying taxes on a $300,000 home. She's paying $3,000 a year, whatever it is. It's worth $1 million now, right? Now there's $10,000, probably more like $12,000 in taxes that are responsible for that property. If it was paid off, somebody's got to pay for that. Proposition 19 did away with all of that. The only way that that property is not it's going to be reassessed. The only way that you can avoid a partially getting around that is if you make that your primary residence. So if I lived in New York and my dad had a mansion in Huntington Beach, right? And I wanted to keep that property, I would have to move and live in that property to avoid having it completely reassessed, because it's still going to be reassessed. What they do is they take the current assessed value. So let's say the property, mom's dad bought the property was $300,000, right? It sells for $1.5 million, right? They give you I forget this term that they call it. Basically give you an allotment of up to $1 million. So basically it's 3 million plus $1 million, or the 300,000 plus $1 million. So now I'm at 1.3, but it's sold for 1.5. So it's an extra $200,000 that's going to increase that property's assessed value. So now it's gonna be 500,000, so it's 300,000, up to $1 million, that's it. So if the property was $3 million, then it just gets larger and larger, and that property tax just goes larger and larger and larger that you do. What they're doing, unfortunately, is just, it's a way to collect more taxes. All right, they again have really, Proposition 19, I don't know, everybody's got their opinions about it, okay? But that in essence is what it did, reassessing property when it transfers from one to another. And if you didn't watch, Andrea Shoup did a really good piece when Felipe had her on for one of our sales meetings. It is recorded, and she goes in detail about Proposition 19 and all the implications that are there so that we are aware as industry professionals what that all means for our clients, okay? So just understand that when you're talking to your clients in regards to this estate that they are potentially inheriting, taxes is a big deal. Home properties in California are quite a bit higher than most of the country. So these are things you need to take in mind. Are you going to be able to afford that estate? Make sense?
Mhm.
Any questions on anything we've covered so far?
Mentioned chat.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. That is an overview of the probate process. All right, an overview. This is not going to go into all of the intricate details. Again, I would encourage you, if you want more information, go to car.org, take the class. Where are you taking your class with?
It was with MTI.
MTI. Okay, excellent. Very good. And I don't know, did Jennifer take it in the same place? Right on. So MTI, you can take it there. You can take it car.org. Take the class. Get designated for all this. A lot can potentially change here with baby boomers getting older and people just not being educated. I forget what the percentage is of those who die intestate or without a will, but the numbers are very high, 80% or something like that. So a lot of probates will be coming down the pipe here. So it might be in your best interest to go ahead and get certified so that you understand this process so that you can properly guide your clients, because we're professionals. They have questions, where do they go for the answers? Make sense? Oh, that's all I got for you guys today. Questions?
So how do I know, as an agent, what's gonna trigger me as an agent to think that there might be a probate situation in this listing?
Grant deed. Grant deed is where you want to start, but to see who's on title. Once I see who's on title, I know. Are they dead or alive? Okay, how did they take title to that property? Now we can move forward. Right, Vince? So that's where you want to start with the grant deed.
So if I go to a listing and the realist tax says that the owner is, Felipe Bernie, but then I show up and they tell me, well, no, he was my father, brother, sister, whatever, he passed away, that could trigger a potential for, based on how he took title, correct?
Absolutely, most likely,
Okay.
yep.
So if it was Felipe Bernie, single man,
Mhm.
would that possibly be a probate situation?
Absolutely, yes, he passed away, absolutely.
And if it was trust, then you've got a different situation.
Now we've got a different situation, a lot easier. It's a trust sale, but we've got the successor trustee is who you're going to be looking for there. Again, that's the terminology you want to understand, who you're going to be speaking to. The successor trustee executes the trust. All right? That's what you're looking for. Any other questions?
David,
Yes.
I just had a comment about the timeline. Can you hear me okay? So the class that Maria and I took spent a lot of time talking about our different roles as a realtor. And that has to do with kind of when we come into the probate and where the executor or administrator is. So for example, if because there's ways that we can go down to the courthouses and actually look for probate cases and probably get lots of leads if it's something you wanted, you were interested in. But if you are meeting somebody and their father, for example, just passed away 3 weeks ago, their motivation to sell their father's house is going to be completely different than somebody who might be 3 to 6 months in the process, because at the beginning they are not getting notices coming in from bill collectors and mortgage payments and things. They might actually be to me somewhat upset if you're like, okay, so you want to list your dad's home, because they're just not in that emotional state. So just kind of something to keep in mind. At the beginning, you can play a role more as an advisor for, oh, maybe we need to fix up the property, or I have an estate contact or a painter, or kind of helping them out versus someone who reaches out 6 months into the process. Then you're looking at it and handling it differently.
No, great point there, absolutely. These people are going through a tough time, so it's going to be great to be an advocate or a consultant in their corner, kind of guide them through this process, So thank you so much for sharing that critical piece right there is the time frame of it all. Also, as Jennifer mentioned, this is all public record. If you wanted to become a probate specialist and that's all you wanted to do, all of this is filed with the county. You can go down and get these orders. It has the address right on the bottom of the property, and it tells you who the personal representative is. So you can reach out and say, "You guys got this file? Do you have an attorney? Do you have an agent who's already working with you?" Sometimes they don't. They started with an attorney, all right. And if the attorney didn't give them a recommendation to an agent, you could step in and potentially represent that client to be their agent. All right. So think about that as well. Get in with a good probate attorney. Like right now, a probate attorney that I work with, and so like 2 that we have right now are because of my attorney friend. She says, "Hey, here you go." Which is why we got probate certified, because she started sending us probate, and we were like, "Wait a minute, I don't know where to go." So, and they were very happy when we showed them that, "Hey, you know what? You sent us these clients. We went ahead and got probate certified, so you can continue to send us your clients, and they'll be in good hands." All right. So a lot of different ways that we can get business. Probate is one of them. Okay. And a question?
Did I have a comment? I just wanted to share that I went through probate situation when my mom passed, and my mom had, which a lot of people may have as they get older, a reverse mortgage on her home. And I basically had to hire a probate attorney. But one of the difficult things that I had to deal with was the bank filed a notice of default within 6 weeks of her death. And then what happened was I had to, with this attorney, had to put an ex parte petition, which basically they were trying to take the house before I had the opportunity to go through probate and finish probate. So it was like really challenging. A lot of people who are older may have that kind of situation where they have a reverse mortgage and the bank is ready to, basically take their home, and they don't even give you the opportunity to go through the whole process, which is like, it took us like 3 months to finish the process from start to finish before we could even put the house up for sale. So just a comment, that's all.
That's,
What you mentioned there, and that's why you did well. I'm glad that it worked out for you and your family, but having that attorney to make sure when he goes to that hearing, he gets those special letters that can expedite that process as well. Because when you have a situation with reverse mortgage, you have a foreclosure that's taking place, and the bank is moving forward, you need to be able to move this process along a little bit faster. The judge needs to be aware of that. The attorney and you are going to get to make sure you get everything done appropriately. Okay? So
can I just make a comment?
Yeah,
That's confusing to me, because I thought with a reverse mortgage, the person who has the mortgage wouldn't actually even be making a payment. So why is the bank so anxious to take away the house? Because the payment is just kind of deducted from the equity, where in a typical mortgage, that's where you better be on top of making that mortgage payment. So I'm confused by that.
Well, because probably since the person passed away, they might have been over the estimated value of the property. So the bank was probably in rush mode to say, okay, we're going to.
Oh.
Not in this case, not in this case.
No.
There was actually a lot of equity in the home. So the advantage of the bank getting the property was that they were going to pocket a lot more money. But because my mom only had the reverse mortgage for about a year before she passed, so in this case, there was a lot of equity, and they just wanted to take advantage of that. They didn't even wait. From what my attorney said, they're not even supposed to send a notice of default letter up until like a 3-month period, but they did it within a 6-week period. So
Wow, that's crazy.
That's the part that's confusing, because usually the NOD wouldn't go out for 3 months on a reverse or on any type of loan. So, but
right.
Since you said notice of default, I was assuming that maybe they were upside down at that point. It was fairly new. That seemed odd. So maybe that was the one exception to the standard rule.
Yeah, he also said, the attorney also said that different banks do things differently, even though the traditional way of doing things could be 3 months. He said, in this case, the bank chose to, send it out before. And the other thing, just to point out, is my mom had Medicare and Medi-Cal because she was disabled. And when you said the creditors were sent out letters, that was one of the letters that was sent. And because there was so much equity in the house, I had to, as the administrator, pay Social Security or Medi-Cal $50,000 because the house was an asset.
Yep, there's a list in here, I can tell you, of the creditors that are,
Super loans.
California Franchise Tax Board, California Department of Health and Care Services, California Victim Compensation and Government Claims Board, Employment Development Department, and then State Board of Equalization. All of those state entities have to receive letters, not also including any other creditors. All right? But of course, the attorney takes care of all that for you. Any other questions or comments?
What is one good resource that agents can go to verify whether or not this is possibly a probate situation other than an attorney? It's a free resource, starts with the letter T. It is title representatives. Get familiar with the title rep. They can help you with a lot of stuff, and they can definitely help you know if you're potentially looking at a probate situation. Okay?
That's it.
Good job, David.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Adavid.
Thank you.
Thank you.